Go.
Rabbi Isai, welcome back to Yerushalmi Yoma. Now the share is brought to you by Gerard Sabri Mortgages, which is myself. So if you have any financial mortgages that are required, please get in touch. We are Lamed Beis Ahmed Aleph in Yerushalmi Yoma. Now, the last thing we said, now we have brought Shmuel's din, who was quoted to say that when they made the Ketores, and even the grinder that was used and the mortar, the pestle of the mortar was treated like a klisharis, and it made the ketores holy when it was ground in it. And that we said that ketores needed a klisharis, a holy vessel. So we're up to here. Amar Rav Chuna said this thing in the name of Shmuel, but he asked, Dava shekadish b'kli nifter. Now, it was given, how can it have Kedushas Haguf? Once it has Kedushas Haguf, rather, you can't redeem it. Now, the Mishnah in Shkalim said they would give the leftover ketores to the craftsman as their wage, and it would become chulin. So you see that they would not make the ketores in Kli Sharet. So Amalek, so Rabbi Yossi answered back, we love Shmuel. Now, surely isn't that Shmuel who's the one who's saying it was made in a Kli Sharet to make the ketores holy? Shmuel Amar Kalhu b'Maisa. Shmuel said that the Chachamim were lenient with the leftovers of communal offerings, that you can redeem it even though it's got Kedushas Haguf. So despite the fact that Ketores has Kedushas Haguf, you can redeem it because it's a carbon sibul. This Palgum, we had a Machlekes, Shmuel and Rav Yochanan. Asiru Tamidin, let's say you have Tamid, Karbanas, the animals, the sheep were left over, that were set aside for Carbon Tamid, and they weren't needed that many at the end of the year. Remember, they always had 6 or 8 in a pen ready. At the end of the year, then you're going to have some left over. What do we do with them? Shmuel Amar niftin tmimim. So Shmuel said, you redeem it while they are tamim, and you don't have to wait for a blemish to come about, and therefore we can use them for the new year. Because once they are redeemed, they become chulin, we can go and acquire it again with the money of the new year. Now, even though an animal which is set aside for carbon yachid cannot be redeemed until it gets a blemish, but communal carbonas, we are lenient, they can be blemished without mum. Rabbi Yechon said, Niftin Kipsula Mugdashin. If any animals were left over, you can redeem them as an animal which has become possible. In other words, after it's possible to bring because it has a blemish. So Shmuel holds, you can redeem things which have got Krob and Sibur, that were left over. Now, although he holds that the grinding, the pestle and the mortar, when they made the ketores was Kli Shares, Kedushas Haguf, you can still redeem it with, as we said in the Gemara Shkalim, because it's Krob and Sibur. Now we brought the views of Shmuel and Rav Yochanan with the Tmidin that were left over. What will be the Amoraim? What about other types of Korban and Sibur that were left over? Isiru Seirim. If at the end of the year you had Chatos goats that were left over of communal offerings, which again are not fitting for that new year, you want to use them in the new year now. They're not fitting for the old year, you want to use them in the new year. They were bought with the money of last year. Ardated is Shmuel, according to the view of Shmuel, if they were left, the niftes, if an Ayla offering can be redeemed when it's perfect to allow it to be brought in the new year, we don't wait for a blemish to come about. Like Kashikain Chatas, surely a Chatas we should allow the same thing. We're not going to wait till a blemish comes about, and we can use it and we'll redeem it and use the money to buy an Ayla for the Beis Mikdash, for the Mizbeach. So an Ayla, even if we're not going to redeem it when it's perfect, they'll redeem it after it gets a blemish, but you'll still bring an Ayla with its money, because any money left over will go for Ayla's Kayat and Mizbeach. It's not going to be completely, it will end up as a carbon. Now a Chatas, if you redeem it only through a blemish, then it's not a Chatas at all. You're only going to use the money to bring an Ayla offering. So if we're lenient with an Ayla to redeem it, to bring again itself as a new Ayla, so how much more so we will be lenient with a Chatas to redeem it, to use the money to bring as a Chatas offering, but we use the money for a separate animal. Adated Rav Yochanan, according to Rav Yochanan, that a tamid which is left over can't be redeemed without a blemish, then what are we going to do with the goats of Seirei Chatas which are left? You have to wait till they get a blemish. He says, you can bring them themselves as Ayla offerings, and you don't have to redeem it at all. Now wait a minute, how can a Chatas be offered as a carbon Ayla? I mean, an animal which has got for a certain carbon, you can't start changing into another. How can you tell me you can bring a goat, a sirei chatas, of a tzibur for Eilav Kais Mizbech? Rav Yosa. Shania. Shania is different. The chatas is different. Why? From a chatas is different, a carbon tzibur chatas than a chatas yachid. Because a chatas tzibur, she'en carbon tzibur nikvain, when are they decided that they are communal carbonas? Ela b'shchita, only at the time of slaughtering. Even though when you separate it, we carbon this, carbon that. But as long as you've not slaughtered it, you can change your mind and use it for something else. So goats that were made holy for chatas tzibur, that were left over, you can shecht it for oil offerings. Amra went to Radyon, tonight based in Hu'al HaMosaros. He says it was a Tanai based in on anything left over, common sibur, she'ikruvu oila, should be brought as oila offerings. Now we come back to the taking of the ketores. Now the Gemara is going to bring a brisa which talks about the kmitza for taking a fistful with a flour offering. Let's see, we've learned in a brisa when it comes to a mincha, it says the Cohen will take malai kumsai, a whole fistful. Yachal, I might think malai kumsai mervairats, that you're going to take a mincha like a heat handful. It's going to come between your fingers and on the sides. It's going to be like a real heaped handful. Talmud Lemitzvah says bekumtzai. No, that means we're lessening it to a degree. You only take what's in the komet, so not more than that. But even bekumtzai, if you're going to look at that word bekumtzai, yachal, I might think yikmites. Maybe take some of the mincha barasha etzba'is, maybe in your tips of your fingers. Since we're going to do less, we're going to reduce. Maybe the less you take, the better. Maybe you just take with the tips of your fingers. Talmud Lemitzvah says malaikum sai, a whole fistful. Okay, so how do you understand this? Chayfes pas yadai. So you cover the palm of your hand with your fingers. You fold them over. You take from the mincha all that goes in that space without heaping it up, without it coming out on the sides. But machavas of macheshes, with these two mincha offerings, which you fry them before you take the kmitza, and the flour is only going to be, 1 second, where are we going this? Choves pas yadai, sorry, there's a full stop there. Choves pas yadai, yes, so you take a whole fistful, but you don't take it coming out the sides. Now, but machavas macheshes, now there are types of flour offerings where you're going to fry it before you take the fistful. So therefore it's baked pieces. So you can't take a whole fistful without bits coming out on the sides. But maichek, so then you'll remove that sticks out from the fistful, be'etzbai, with your finger from the top, melamala and lamata. So through your thumb from the top, and through from the top, and your other finger from the bottom, you'll remove anything that comes out of the fistful. Now, so you've got a pasuk of taking a flour offering, and you've got the pasuk of the ketores. So taman with a flour offering, our taman we say, malai kumsai. You mustn't have any. It's got to be a whole fistful. Another pasuk says bekumsai, which means you shouldn't have more than that. Bahacha. Now with the ketores, our taman we say malai chafnaf, a whole handful. That you mustn't have anything missing from your handful. But there's no pasuk which tells me that you shouldn't have any more too much, on a special measure. So maybe the Kohen Gadol is allowed to take a whole fistful and it's a bit sticking out through his fingers, through the space of his hands. Maybe it's okay to have a bit extra. Rabbi Yaakov Barada, Baracha, Rav Simon, Shem Rabbi Yeshua, Ben Levi, it says in the Torah, with a flour offering malai kumsai, with the ketores malai chafnav, we learn the fistful to the ketores because they're Shabbat. Ma'ala halon with a mincha kometz hachasev hayaseh pasul, a fistful which is too much or too little is no good. But so here as well with the ketores hachasev hayaseh pasul. If it's too much or too little, pasul. It's got to be a handful exactly, not too little, not too much. Okay, now. Chofnaim. Now, when the Kohen Gadol takes the two handful, mal sheyaseh ki klisharis lekadish. Does that make it like a klisharis to make the ketores holy? What's inside? And then another question: Adam mal sheyachvos. Can someone else take the handful and then yitain the terchofnav and put it into the Kohen's handfuls for him to put in the kodesh kadashim? maybe the one who takes the handful has to do the keteris himself, or can someone else do it first? And question number 3, if the Kohen Gadol, is he allowed to make a measuring container exactly the size of his handfuls, and put the shear of Malay Chofnov using that measuring, or maybe no, he has to take it with his hands? And question number 4, is he allowed to take the keteris in a vessel? B'kol chofnayim mesharin. Does that mean if you can make a vessel, do you make it like that person, or any person rather, or no, it has to be the measure of that Kohen Gadol? And question number 5, if he did the keteris and he put it in a spoon or mace, and then he died before he was able to bring in the Kodesh Kodashim, so can someone else now go and take the handfuls from the first Kohen Gadol? Someone else is now appointed. Can he just take over from where the Kohen Gadol left off and take that handful? Or do he have to go and take a new handful himself? So we don't answer any other questions, but the 4 latter questions all depend on the first question. Because in Tema Chofnaim also Klishos Lekadesh, if you're going to tell me the handfuls I've got a din of klishos to make the keteris holy, this tells me that Chofan, if he took the keteris and he put it in the spoon and then a mace and then he died before he brought it, no one else who's appointed now can go and take that amount in. And no one else can take a handful and put it in his handfuls. You're not allowed to make a measure for his handful size. We don't look at everyone else to make a measure. We don't need to use him. Whereas in Tema, if you're going to tell me that we didn't make the handfuls like a klishos, then that tells me that Chofan, if he did the keteris or mace and he died before he was able to take it in the Holy of Holies, someone else can take over, and can go in with his handful. And also, I'll say, someone else can take the handful, and put in the handful of this Kohen Gadol. And you're allowed to do a measure for his hand size. And you can look at every person, you can make the kli like any other person, it doesn't have to be exactly like him. So the 4 questions where we didn't have an answer, you can answer them, all depend on the first question. Is klishores, if the handfuls are made like a klishores lekadesh. So once you know that answer, you can work out the other 4 questions. Lemaisa, we didn't answer the first question, and then we haven't therefore answered any of the other questions. Now, he's allowed to take a whole handful. He puts in a spoon, hagadol, someone who was big, lifigada, according to his size. So there'll be a lot of keteris. If his handful's bigger, there'll be a lot. And afilu kimchis, even like Rishwal ben Kimchis, shows the Yadam Masechet Zabar Kav, his hands could hold 4 kav. The hakatan if he cut. Now someone who was small, afilu ben Gamle, Rishwal ben Gamle, shows the Yadam Masechet Zaysim, he could only hold 2 olives. Now, back to the question. One of the avodah of the korban is taking the blood to the mizbeach. So we're going to ask about this avodah now. Hilach bazar mahu. What's the din if the blood going to the mizbeach is done through a Yisrael? Is it kosher or not? Now there are 4 avodas of every korban, right? You've got the slaughtering. Anyone can do the slaughtering. Receiving the blood, taking the blood to the mizbeach, and then sprinkling it on the mizbeach. So there's 4 avodas in every korban. So what's the din of Yisrael taking the dam towards the mizbeach? Yeah, it's done through Yisrael. Is it kosher or not? Chizki Yama, he said hilach bizar kosher. It is okay. Rabbi Yana Yama, he said hilach bizar is possible. He said it's not okay. Right? The Bavli actually discusses if a Zar took it, can you take it back and take it again through a Cohen? One of the people there said yes you can, and one of them said you can't. Hilach Bazar Pasal, he's the one where it says in Babli there's no takana for the korban. Okay. Some say Chizki said Hilach Bazar is kosher. But not that it's kosher, but despite this Pasal is kosher because you can correct it by taking it back again and then bringing it back again. Right. Okay. Others are now saying that Chizki was Machsheh Halacha through Yisrael. Okay, let's carry on. Masnisa pliga al Rav Yana. The Mishnah later on goes against Rav Yana. Kibel, if the Cohen received the blood and Klishares b'minai, the Keli is holding his right hand, and then Nasan b'swan. Then he goes and puts in his left. Yasan imina, put it back in the right. To carry on the carbon. Now, what do you see here? Is where the right hand is closer to the Mizbeach. Probably the case is that right hand is closer to the Mizbeach than the left. And when the left is closer to the Mizbeach, it sounds like both cases, where the right is closer to the Mizbeach or the left is closer to the Mizbeach. And if the right is closer more to the Mizbeach, you're putting it in the left hand, from the left to the right, and it's an action done through the left, and you're bringing it closer to the Mizbeach, so that's taking it with the left. Now, Smoila Lav Kazahi, now surely taking it in the left hand is like Yisrael taking it. And if taking it with Yisrael is possible, how can our Mishnah allow you when you're taking it with your left hand? You're bringing it nearer with your left hand. And yet, that's like Yisrael. So the Gemara says, Tifta Shais Smoila Klapi Klifnim. No. Talking about a case where the left hand was nearer to the Mizbeach than the right. When you're taking the Keli with the blood to your right, you're not bringing it near with the left hand, you're distancing it. You're taking it backwards. You're taking it backwards from the Mizbeach. And that's not Halacha. Halacha is going towards the Mizbeach. And therefore you're allowed to do it with the left hand or through Yisrael. Even they're going to tell me that it's further from the Mizbeach more than the right. When you put the Keli with the blood from the left to the right, you're bringing it nearer to the Mizbeach with the left. That doesn't mean Yisrael is okay, because Shani Hilch Bazar, Shani Hilch Biyad, there's a difference between Yisrael taking it and your left hand taking it. Right? Your left hand is pushing it back to your right hand. The Cohen is just moving the Keli from one place on his body to another place on his body. On Razira, Pshitas Yad, moving something with your hand, from your left hand to your right hand, that's not like walking. That's not considered walking. Hasn't got a din of avodas halacha. So it doesn't need to be done in the right hand. As opposed to halacha zah, which Rav Yanai puzzled, is talking about a case where he went with his feet with the blood and he brought it nearer to the Mizbeach, and that is walking. And that's possible because it's done through Yisrael. Masnisa pliga al Rav Yanai. The Mishnah later on goes against Rav Yanai. Let's see. Now, if after you receive the blood, imagine it got spilt. Nishfach minakli ala ritzba ba'asofak. It fell on the floor. You gather it into a vessel. Kosher. It's okay. You can sprinkle on the mizbeach. Now, when the blood is spilt on the floor, in which way does it spread when the blood falls on the floor?
All over the place.
It falls everywhere. Some of it might have gone in the direction of the mizbeach. Because the Mishnah allows you to gather all that's spread out, even that which is going in the direction of the Mizbeach, and go and sprinkle it. So you see, dam which has gone of its own without a Cohen is kosher. So let's learn from here that even if Yisrael takes the blood and brooks it to the Mizbeach, it's kosher. Because taking it by Yisrael is not worse than if it went by itself on the floor, not through a Cohen. Tifta, we can explain the Mishnah talking about a case showing Mizgalgal Klape Chutz. No. It was rolling away from the Mizbeach. It didn't fall on the floor and go towards the Mizbeach. It went, maybe there was a slight incline, it rolled away from the Mizbeach. There was no halacha here, which was possible. It went away from the Mizbeach. Even if you're going to tell me, it went in direction of the Mizbeach, it doesn't mean Yisrael can take it, that is kosher, because Shani Hilach Bazar, Shani Hilach Me'elav. It's worse Yisrael taking it than if it goes on its own. The din is different, right? Yisrael might be puzzle. So it's puzzle, according to Rav Yanai. It's done avodah psula, but halacha done on its own is not halacha at all, even if the blood comes closer. Therefore, it's not puzzle through that, because there's no avodah psula. Now, after the Gemara distinguishes between halacha through, on regalim and the one which happened on its own, whether you walked with it or it went on its own when the blood was spilt. Now, what about when it's going from your left hand to your right hand? Arav Zira, Shitas Yad, like stretching out the keli from your left hand to your right hand, also Isa Kehiloch. He says they treat it like it's going on the floor on its own. Just like going inside is not called halacha. It doesn't pass the carbon. So taking it in your hand to move from your left hand to your right hand is not halacha. Because you're standing still. It's going from your hand to your hand. And therefore it doesn't pass the carbon. Masnisa pliga al Rav Yanai. Our Mishnah goes against Rav Yanai because we've learned not to. Now you take the pan with the coals in your right hand. And the spoon with the keteris in your left. You walk towards the heichal to bring the coal and the keteris to the Kodesh Kodashim. Now, surely, halacha with your left is like Yisrael. And according to Rabbi Yana, who passes Yisrael, how are you able to take the keteris to the Kodesh Kodashim in your left hand? You've got the coal in your right, which is heavy, so it needs to be in your right hand, and the keteris in your left hand. How are you able to take the keteris in your left hand? The answers we gave before are not good enough. Because where the Kohen Gadol is going, he's going in his feet to the Kodesh Kodashim, and the keteris is in his left hand. How is it allowed? Right? So the Gemara answers, Shani, you know why it's different? He can't do it any other way. He has to get the coals and the keteris together in the Kodesh Kodashim. The coal he has to take in the right hand, and he has to take the keteris in his left. So here, avoda halacha is kasha with your left hand. But surely there is a way to take the coal and the keteris with your right hand. What should he do? Yisla aisai bizrai. You know what? The keteris spoon, I don't know, hang it on your shoulder, on your right shoulder, through a chain or something. And the pan with the coal you hold with your right hand. Why are you telling me, oh, it's okay in the left hand with no other solution? The Gemara says no. Ein aderech covered. It's not respect to go in the Holy of Holies when something is thrown on your back, whatever. That's not right. You can't do that. V'yachlif. Now, why not change the pan into your left hand and put the keteris in your right? Why not change them? So the Gemara says, so basically he says, take the pan from the right hand to the left hand. Now, when you got the coals, you had to do it in the pan which you held with the right. But now change it over. After you've got the coals, you can move the pan to your left, and that way you can take the keteris with your right. So the Gemara says, Sabrin Meima, they wanted to say, in Hechlif, if you did put the pan from one hand to another, apostle is no good. So then the Gemara says, well, Vayachte. Now, look, put the coals in the pan in your right hand. So in your right hand, you'll hold a spoon or a fork, and you'll take the coals and you'll shovel them into the pan, which you're holding in your left hand. And so basically, when you're doing the shoveling, you'll hold the pan in the right, okay? Or maybe you'll put the coals into a pan which you're holding in your left, and then you'll take the pan in your left hand without moving it from right to left. So basically hold the pan in your left hand, because we learned in a brayso about the coals for the keteris every day. If you put the coals into a pan which you're holding in your left hand, by pushing them with your right hand with a spoon or something, kosher. It's okay. So let's say the same thing with the keteris Yom Kippur. You'll bring the coals in your right hand with a spoon or fork into the pan, which is in your left hand. So we'll put the pan in your left hand, you'll put the coals in with your right hand, and that way you can take the coals to the Kodesh Kodashim with your left hand, and the keteris will be in your right. So Gemara answers, the avodah of the keteris Yom Kippur is different than the keteris of every day. Because Tamam, over in the keteris Yom Kippur, if you put the coals with your right into the pan which is in your left, pasul, no good. And if you put the coals in the pan in your right, and then hechlif, you changed your hands for the pan and you moved it to the other hand, pasul, no good. But amhacha with the keteris of every day, if you brought the coals with your right hand and you push them into a pan which is in your left hand, it's kosher. And if you put the coals in the pan which you're holding in your right, and then hechlif, and then you swapped the pan over to your left, then it's possible. So to conclude, the Keteris Yom Kippur is not like any other avodah. It's an exception to the rule. Avodah is allowed with the left hand, but there's no other way you can bring the Keteris inside. Okay? Usually, halacha with small is pasul, and halacha with izah is also pasul. And that's what Rabbi Yanai said before. Okay? So the question is what the Gemara means here. The Mefarshim have a difficulty. So they say here, even if you're allowed to take the pan with your left, like every day, if you took it with your right and then moved it to the left, we're saying the coals are pasul, and moving it from hand to hand will pasul with avodah, and that is a chidush. Why should that be? Moving the coals when you're in your right pan and you move the pan to the left hand, why should that be possible? And especially the coals Yom Kippur. I mean, even if you took them in the beginning with your right and you took them inside with your left, you're not really taking it from hand to hand, because you know what? After you've taken the coals, you take the pan of coals and you put it on the floor, and after you take the keteres and you put it in the spoon, you picked up the pan later on and you took it with the keteres to the Kodesh Kodashim. So there's other things in between anyway. You're going to put the pan down. Mm-hmm. So why should there be a problem with taking with your right hand, moving it to the left hand? Oh, you're going to put the pan down anyway. And the big chiddush to say that after you take it with the right, you must carry on with the right. Even though in the middle you're actually going to put the pan down on the floor to be involved with the keteres. So why should it matter? And according to this pirush, the Gemara takes on that taking the coals for the keteres for every day is an avodah. What's the source for this? Where do we find that there's an avodah every day of taking the coals for the keteres? Some learn the word vayachlif. We don't know. It's a question here. Doesn't matter if he changed his hands when he take the keteres with his right and the coals with his left. Is it kosher or not? So they learn vayachlif. Is it okay to change it over? And the one says, well, they wanted to say if you did it as pasul. And then there's another stuff. What about if you take the pan with your right to your left after you took it first with your right and then you move it to the left? Is that okay? And the one says, well, if you took it from the right to the left, it's okay because it was in the right to begin with. It's good enough, that would be kosher. And why with the blood of a behemoth, we learned in Zvachim, that if the Cohen receives the blood in his right and then he puts it into the left, he has to go and put it back to the right. Why not say the same thing? You put it in your right to the left, it was beginning of it was in the right, it should be okay, it should be fine. Alright, so there are various difficulties with this Gemara, but we shall move on. Okay. Now, it's not the way for the Cohen to go take the coals and the keteres in his right hand. So he has to take both of them to the Kodesh Kodashim in one go. Now, why can he not go twice? First take the coals with his right, then take the keteres with his right. So if you take each one separately, kippur, the avodah is kosher, but it's not very good. He's transgressed by going to the Kodesh Kodashim an extra time. Because now he's going in twice instead of once. Now, the question is like this. Which is the issur here? The first time he goes in with let's say the coals. Second time he goes in with the keteres. Which is the issur? You're meant to go once. Yeah. So the issur, chiv misa b'dei shamayim, going, is it on the first time you went in or on the second? Now, the lav and the chiv misa b'dei shamayim is on an extra going in. Okay? Apart from the 4 times that the Torah allowed the Kohen Gadol to do for the sake of Avodah Yom Kippur. So the question is it the first time when he goes with the coals alone, or the keteres? Which is the one which is the extra one? Is it the first one he didn't do right and required him to go an additional time? Or the second one because he didn't do the first one right? Which is the worst, the first or the second? Chavrai, they want to say Alach Reina on the second one, which is the extra going in. He's done the first one. Oh no, Rabbi said, wait a minute. If he took the coals in first time, we tell him go and take the keteres in. And you're telling me he's over on the second one? We're telling him go in, and you're telling me he's over? You want to say that he's over when we're telling him, please go in? Ela ala rishona. So you know what? Maybe the first one. Now, Taman Tanina, we've learned elsewhere. Now, it's a similar story here, so let's think it through. Someone is Tameh in the Azara. He should have left straight away, but he didn't. So what did he do? Instead of going out straight away, he bowed down there. He stayed a few extra seconds when he shouldn't have done. Or he went a long way out when he could have done a short way out. Now, if he goes straight away, he's potter. Even if it ended up being a bit longer than bowing, because he's honest, he has to get out. He couldn't go out in that less than that time. Fine. But here he stayed a few extra seconds and went out the short way. Now, maybe it's Chaim on the time that he stayed there. His extra time, he shouldn't have been inside. Now, you could say, even if he would go out straight away, he would still be inside during those seconds when he bowed down. Yeah? He spent a few seconds bowing down. But even if he went straight away, he would still have been inside during that time when he bowed down. The time extra was later on, when he's on the way going out. Had he not bowed down, he would have been out by now. So on Ezer Mehenu over. Which of the two times is he over on the Isur, not to stay in the Beis Mikdash, but Tumah, not to be in the state of Tumah in the Beis Mikdash? Is it the first seconds, where he waited and bowed down when he shouldn't have done, and therefore he caused the delay of his eventual delay because he stayed a few extra seconds inside? Or is it the latter seconds where he could have been outside already and ended up being inside because he stayed a few seconds? Chavrei Amri, they wanted to say al achrona. You know what? It's on the last few seconds where he's on the way out, but he could have been out already. Amalan Rabbi Yosef says, I'd say, wait a minute, we tell him to go now. But you're telling him it's chayav for now when he's on his way out, and we tell him to go? Ela al rishona. He won't say it's the first few seconds when you were delaying, when you were bowing down. That is the extra time when you could have been outside. Let's see here. So they learn you're chayav on the second leaving Misa b'dei Shemaim and Malkus, because you put yourself in shogeg and a matzav your onus. Mitzvah you got to get out, and when you come in, let's say your onus, you're nechnas b'ratzon. Okay. Some learn. Yeah, this person here, this Cohen, right? He's taken them one in separately, right? So the question is, he took the ketores, the coals first, then the ketores. So some learn, look, he's got the avodah to do. That should push away the prohibition. Let the asay of the avodah push away the love of coming in an extra time. Maybe you shouldn't get malchus for it. Shouldn't be over properly on a love. Yes, it's osman Torah. He caused the second coming when he didn't need to. He did wrong, but he's now got an avodah to do. So therefore, he shouldn't be chayav for that. So sometimes when the Gemara asks which coming in you're over, the nafkaman is which one you're chayav and which one we warn him to get malchus. But he says it's not that. But the nafkaman is, are you chayav or not? Some would say you're chayav on coming in the second time, and you're not chayav even on coming in. There's no issa the first time, and the second time you have to come in anyway because asay doich aloi saseh. Others learn that we don't say asay doich aloi saseh because you caused to have a love coming in a second time when you did wrong. You should have not have to come in a second time. You should have taken everything properly in the first time. Okay, let's carry on. The Kodesh, between Kodesh Kodashim and Benei and Amma. So we said between the two paroiches there was an Amma there. A hint to this, why there were two with an Amma between Chayidut and Taman. We've learnt over there in Midas, which tells us about the base of Mikdash Mizrach east to west. Amma tracks in, there was a wall, a width of an Amma between the Hechel and the Kodesh Kodashim, and on the west, Esrim Amma the base Kodesh Kodashim, 20 Ammas towards the Kodesh Kodashim. Mal Amma tracks in, and Rabbi Yoda Basraya, he said Amma Tirkusain. It means it's made up of two words, a Greek word tirk, which means inside, and sin, which means outside. So we didn't know, what is this din? Ma mibiflim or mibachutz? Is it part of the Kodesh Kodashim on the inside, and it's holy like Kodesh Kodashim, or is it like the Hechel outside? Rabbi Yossi, that's what it says, in front of the Kodesh Kodashim, there was a Hechel of 40 Ammas. This tells me, mibifnim, that it was on the inside within the Kodesh Kodashim, not on the outside of the Heichal. Now, why is there something about the Amma? But doesn't it say we asked this base Kodesh Kodashim, Esrim Amma? It says the Holy of Holy was of 20 Ammas. So you must say this Amma was outside, and it was part of the Heichal. So you got psukim which seem to contradict. Was it part of the inside of the Kodesh Kodashim, or was it part of the Heichal? So we don't know. Now, Rabbi Yossi argued on the Chachamim. He said there was one paroiches between them. He says v'idila ha-paroiches. There was one paroiches between them. Right? We don't know where it was, but he says there was one paroiches which had openings on the sides. But the Rabbanan said there were two, and you had to walk between them. Right? Ma'atav and Rabbanan. What's the source of Chachamim who said there were two, one on each side of that amagat, based on v'idila ha-paroiches lachem. The paroiches will separate. And the word ubein, there's an extra word there. Shiv said bein kodesh and kodesh kodashim. They said an extra bein to tell me there was another paroiches between the kodesh and kodesh kodashim. In the heichal it reached till the outer side of the paroiches, from the inner side the paroiches, and under the thickness of the paroiches, and within that there was the kodesh kodashim. So basically there was a suffix where the border was between the two, whether on the outside of the amma or the inside of the amma. So they had to make two, and that way the outer one of one was also the outer one of the Amma, and the Salachis of the other one was on the inner side of the Amma. Ma'avale Rabbi Yossi. What does Rabbi Yossi do with the word ubein, the extra bein? He holds there was one paroiches, an Amma thick. So he doesn't learn this drasha that you need, that it should start from the thickness of the paroiches and inside. It could be the Kodesh Kodashim. Kedusha only started from the inner side of the paroiches, and under the paroiches was maybe Kedusha's heichal. So what does he derish between the psukim and ubein? He says bein Kodesh Kodashim Shalamana and the Kodesh Kodashim Shalamatan. Whether the Kodesh Kodashim above, there was a second floor in the Beis Mikdash, and the Kodesh Kodashim below. So Beis Mikdash there was like an attic, a second floor. So he says there he held. His pasuk tells me that in addition to the holiness between the two, the paroiches down below, you need another paroiches in the top floor to separate between the Kodesh of the attic up there, the top floor, and the Kodesh Kodashim of the Aliyah. So you needed there's also a paroiches at the top. But less the Rabbanon came to Chachamim not hold of that. So he says Islam they hold Kaida Tanina, like that which you learn, that anything separates between that, like Midas, Rashi Pispasin Mavdil, there were beams that stuck out to separate Ba'aliyah on the top floor, Bein HaKodesh and Bein Kodesh Kodashim. So there wasn't a paroiches there was other protrusions coming out which told you to separate between the two. So according to Chachamim, there's no paroiches on the top floor, but there were beams that extended outwards from the walls, and they reached till, let's say, the beginning of Kodesh Kodashim. Basically, there was a recognition that's where the border was between them, and that's why, according to them, the extra word ubein wasn't coming to tell me the paroiches separates the aliyah, but that on the bottom floor, the sadachitzon of the paroiches, the outer side of the paroiches, will separate between Kodesh Kodashim, and Kodesh Kodashim will start under the thickness of the paroiches. So that's why they had to make two, because the suffix, they didn't know where the border was, and therefore they didn't know where the outer side was, so they made two, and they would have the Amma in between. To be continued, Rabbi Sai.